Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to the second installment in the DRC railroad build. In the previous installment, I promised that I would tell you what the reporting marks stand for in this video, and I will, sometime before the end of it. This week, the project is to build the lower helix. So without further ado, let's just head out to the workshop and get busy. Well, here is the benchwork as I left it last week. The task for the next couple of days is to get the lower helix in. Need to continue this ramp around the outside of this rectangular area. It's an elliptical helix because that's the only way of getting enough length on each lap with the width that I have available. Now, before I can put in any supports for the helix, I have to make sure that I'm not getting in the way of the low-level reversing loop which goes underneath it. So although I am not contracted to lay the track, except in the helix of course, I do need to make sure I plot it accurately. So I'm going to go back in the house now and work out exactly where it goes. I already have this drawing out here, but what I need to do is mark the curve radii on it so that I can just draw around my templates. So let me get on with that and I will be right back. Don't go away. Well, I've started marking out the lower level reversing loop. I've got two parallel lines 1.25 inches apart and the track goes between them. I started by using my radius bar for the inside track, and then I cut a block of plywood 1.25 inches square and then run that along the outside with the pencil to give me the two parallel lines. It means the actual radius of the curve is slightly larger than what's quoted, but it still fits, and that's good. The important thing is not to go smaller than it's supposed to be. I've got the first piece of sub road bed for the lowest lap of the helix positioned approximately where it's going to go, just to give me an idea of where this curve, the one currently marked by the 30-inch radius bar, where that has to go. But I've had to take a break from that and mark out more pieces of sub-road bed for the helix. So let's go over the other side of the workshop. I started with a full sheet. I made one half circle as accurately as I could and another quarter circle, and then I've drawn around that in various places. I found I was able to get 4 half circles and 6 quarter circles out of one sheet. There is one line that's in the wrong place, you'll have to excuse that. But as long as I don't end up following it with a jigsaw, I'll be okay. So let me cut out some more road bed and I'll be right back. Long-time viewers may recall how I laid out the helixes on the Keweenaw and Scenic Valley Railroad by putting a sheet of plywood over the hole in the helix frame and drawing a 16-pointed star. Well, with this railroad I can't use that method because it's an elongated oval. So this should show how I worked it out here. I started off by plotting where the semicircles go, drew round them, then drew the straights to join them together. And you can see now I have a long level and a straight edge clamped at the point where they join and at the two extreme ends of the oval. And then I have my large speed square clamped to the intersection, and I just use another straight edge to draw lines at 30 and 60 degrees. That divides the end curves into 6 even pieces, and then I will divide the straights into either 2 or 3, I haven't decided yet. And from there I can work out exactly how much higher than the previous one each riser needs to be. So I guess now I can go off and do those calculations, and I'll be right back when I'm ready to continue. Don't go away. Well, it's now Wednesday morning. I did not make a recording before I went in yesterday, but I did get most of the risers for the bottom level of the helix already cut. If you look closely at the markings on the benchwork, you can see that I started with the end riser in exactly the position I drew it, because I plotted it. and then the others from there are gradually moved about 3/4 of an inch further away. I added 3/4 there and 1.5 there and 2 1/4 at this point. That way, by going with a 1/4 inch step on each riser, the straights are at exactly a 2% grade and the curves at the ends are slightly lower, thus compensating for the extra drag of the curve. I may or may not have mentioned that I ended up with a lap that was about 8 inches more than I needed for a 2% rise. So everything worked out well there. Most of these risers are not glued in place yet. As you can see, there are a few places where they foul the lower level reverse loop, so I have to modify them. But I'm going to need to get the roadbed and the track in on that low level first while it's still accessible. I've positioned turnouts in this location, one there and one at the end. That one on the swing gate is a 60-33, number 6, and this one is also number 6, but it's a 50-30. Well, I have now installed the foam roadbed around the reversing loop. I have modified the turnout to fit the location. I had to cut all 3 ends off, but now it works perfectly. I still have 3 more wood ties to put back in there. I saved those. I've already curved the 2 pieces of flex track that go either side of it to fit perfectly. I've also drilled a hole in the throw bar and cut the necessary opening in the benchwork below it. So now it's time to get out the glue and the weights and install it. Well, that is the reversing loop laid. 6 yards of microengineering flex track and 1 turnout. I have deliberately stopped the track short of the section joint. There's a good reason for that. I only needed to get beyond the point where it's difficult to lay. Accessing this area is easy, so it can be done later. And I don't want to leave rail joints right on the very edge, if I can help it. Because this is a swing gate, there can't be any rail joiners at the ends. So what I'm going to do eventually is glue blocks of wood to the plywood and then glue the copper ties to that. That will hold the ends in proper alignment and should eliminate any problems with moving track. Anyway, with that done, I can now go back to putting in the benchwork for the first lap of the helix. So let me just get back to that, and I'll check in with you again later. Don't go away. Well, that is the first lap of helix sub-roadbed installed. It's a little bit later in the afternoon than I expected to be making this video. That is because on this half circle at this end, I was having a little bit of trouble getting the post to stay down when I screwed the top on. Because with the nature of the helix, I do have to force the plywood into a slight twist. So what I did at the other end was just glue the supports in place and then went inside, worked on something else for a couple of hours, and then I came back out and I've just screwed the sub-roadbed down. So that's the first lap done. That's about as far as I expected to get today anyway. I suppose I can continue with the next straight piece, but then that's as far as I'll be able to go, because after that I'll need to get track on the lower level. So don't go away, I will check in with you again later. Well, I have now laid the roadbed and the track around the first lap. The track ends here at this last weight because there is less than 36 inches of roadbed left. So I'm not going to cut a piece to go in there, there's nothing to be gained by that. The next step is to get the plywood in along that straight and around this quarter curve, and then it needs to exit approximately where the Sharpie is. I did check it last night and it looks like I do have exactly 3.5 inches of space between the two levels. So a 4-inch rise, 1/2 inch plywood and 3.5 inch spaces. Exactly as I was on the previous railroad. Anyway, I'm going to get back to work and I'll check in with you again later. Don't go away. Well, I've cut the next couple of pieces of helix sub-roadbed. The straight piece that the drill is sitting on is permanently installed, while this curved piece is just resting there. I don't want to risk disturbing the glue at the bottom of the blocks just yet. But I'm making this video clip just to show my method of marking out the next piece. This piece of sub-roadbed will take it all the way to the benchwork joint and the swing gate. There's only a very small distance where the helix is more than a single lap. I could have just had the straight continue a bit more, cross right over it, and then make a 90-degree curve to parallel the benchwork edge. But I wanted to cut it back and give as much space as possible available for the trestle in this area, because there will be a curve on the second level, comes around this corner, and the plan calls for a tall trestle. And doing it this way allows a good 16 inches for the ground to fall away below track level. Anyway, next thing to do is to cut this piece out, get it installed. So let me go away, do that, and I'll be right back. At this point in the process, it's probably prudent to do a test just to see what clearances we have. Here is a full-length passenger car, which is a lot longer than anything the client is going to be running. We already talked about limiting it to 60-foot cars, but even with an 85-foot passenger car, there is still plenty of clearance. It's a good 3/8 of an inch. And the end swing on the 282, which is the size of locomotive it's going to be using, there is a huge amount of clearance. And we already know that it's the same spacing between levels as on the previous railroad, and that was sufficient to take double stacks, even though he's not going to be running double stacks on this railroad. So now with the clearance test done, I don't have to worry about clearances at any point during the process, so I can put the locomotive and the passenger car away and get back to work. Well, I have just installed another 9 feet of roadbed and track. So that is the lower helix done. This is where it exits. It will then head across the swing gate for a second time. It will reappear briefly as a low-level track, and then it will continue its climb up around the back of the staging yard, reappearing in the scene at the far end of the railroad, 14 inches higher than the staging yard. Now, I'm not going to bother starting that today. I'm going to go inside and get a plan for it, figure out what I need in the way of the joists, because this middle level framing is going to be a little awkward. I have to put in S-shaped joists to allow for the low level track rising up the back. Well, that's all for this installment. I hope you've enjoyed the video and the progress on the Dining Room Central Railroad. I'm going to sign off here, and I hope to see you next week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.